judges here. Starting on my left is Erlene, the world famous ethics professor, so she knows how much the bribe should be and make sure everything works out right. There's Elia, she's an actress for the Pelican Theater here, so she knows about the stage also. We have Debbie. She's a director, an actress, and stage and screen, and we're in Canada, I guess, huh? So we got it's an international deal here. And Larry, who's been on the stage for 50 years, something almost like that. Yeah. He's a drummer and he's been performing for a long time, so he knows what it's like to be up here too. So we want to thank the judges for coming up. To get it started here, I'm not sure who's all here yet, but give everybody a minute to get here. I'm going to do just a little poem that was actually a Lyle Lovett song. Jimmy Buffett did it, and this is not to be Jimmy. But it's If I Had a Boat. If I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean, and if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean, me upon my pony on my boat. And if I were Roy Rogers, I'd sure enough be single. I couldn't bring myself to marry an old Dale. I'd just be me and Trigger, and we'd go riding through the movies, and we'd buy a boat, and on the sea we'd sail. And if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we could all together go out on the ocean, me upon my pony on my boat. Now the mystery masked man was smart. He got himself a Tonto, because Tonto did the dirty work for free. But Tonto, he was smarter. And one day said, "Kimosabe, kiss my ass, I bought a boat, I'm going out to sea." And if I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. And if I had a pony, I'd ride him on my boat. And we'd all together go out on the ocean, me upon my pony on my boat. And if I were like lightning, I wouldn't need no sneakers. I'd come and go wherever I would please, and I'd scare them by the shade tree, and I'd scare them by the light pole, but I would not scare my pony on my boat out on the sea. Lyle Lovett wrote that. At least I think, as far as I can tell, Lyle Lovett wrote it. Jimmy Buffett did it at the sign also. So, I'm going to go count from the way people signed up. I'm going to read your name. And if you're here, that means you get to go. And the first one, after Mike Linda, who canceled on us because she has a sore throat, is Dale on Color Me Gone. Is Dale here? Maybe after a poem about Roy Rogers not marrying Dale. Okay, the next one's Joshua Slocum from the Good Ship Spray. I believe he died about 600 years ago or 300 years ago or so. So maybe Elizabeth on Vivacia, are you available? Okay, I know you wanted to go a little bit later. You wanted me to go? Oh, that's right, you're waiting for your husband. Next one's Billy, and he called in late. Kay Jackson, Gone Nuts. Kay's going to do some stuff for us, and then at the tail end, she's written one for everybody, almost everybody in the Anchorage. So we're going to have her come back and do that one at the tail end. But right now, here's Kay. There's 4-minute time limit, but since there's not many people, maybe it's not real tight. But Richard's going to have a timer, and at 3.5 minutes, he will raise his button.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have 30 seconds
Okay.
for that, but
So don't talk.
We won't shoot you.
Okay. write poetry, and our favorite landfall when we cross over from San Carlos is San Juanico. So I wrote this one, and it says, if you like to spend your day anchored in an awesome bay, with trails to hike when you're ashore, and reefs aplenty to explore, white sand beaches and sea caves, a cruiser's shrine behind the waves. If you're not into all these things, then skip the joy that this day brings. If these are things of which you seek, though, point your bow to San Juanico. Okay. Anyway, when we left San Carlos, it was 2 in the morning, and we had totally flat seas, and it was a clear, cloudless sky. And it was so beautiful, and I wrote, Heavenly Chart. God, the great architect, made for us a chart. It is the most beautiful, glorious piece of art. He put it in the heavens, right there in plain sight. So all we have to do is glance to the sky at night. There's galaxies and planets, clusters of bright stars, like Gemini and Aries, and the reddish cast of Mars. There's Andromeda and Neptune Blue, Leo 1 and Leo 2, Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, and Phoenix, Hercules, Delphinus, Villa, and Lynx. There's Orion and Libra, Taurus, he's the bull, the Big and Little Dipper. There is a whole sky full, like Jupiter the giant and Saturn with its rings. There's majors and there's minors, and Pegasus with his wings. The Aurora Borealis, Milky Way, to name a few. And of course there's Mother Earth, from where we see this awesome view. The sun and moon, silver and gold, the beauty there to just behold. He made these wonders for all to see, this heavenly chart for you and me. And this is a short one. I love anchoring out. We hardly ever go into marinas, so I wrote home. Home is where the anchor drops, I always like to say. I love to see the different views from each and every bay. From city lights to darkest cove, each one's an awesome sight. The beauty there to just behold beneath the stars at night. Someday we'll have to move ashore. Not for many years, I pray, because home is where the anchor drops, I always like to say.
That was her second time at public speaking. First time was last year about this event. Is there a mark on Epic Ship?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's a hard bar to rise to, but I'll do my best. So, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. My ancestors moved out to Africa back in about 1800, and our family's been living there ever since in southern tip. And we grew up on a farm in Africa, and then my sister went off to boarding school and off to college, and eventually she met this guy and she liked him a lot. And so they got married, and one of the nice things about him was that he had a British passport, which in South Africa was a big advantage, and that meant they could leave. So they jumped on a plane and flew off to England, and they settled down there, and they tried to raise a couple of kids, but we all know that kids need sun to grow properly, and there isn't any sun in England. So they had 3 kids, but these things were just not getting anywhere. They weren't growing and things were going badly. So they found out that the sun shines in Australia. So they sold their house and bought a boat, and they hadn't sailed much, but now they had to. And they loaded their 3 kids, 2 years old, 4 years old, and 6 years old, onto a boat, sailed through Paris, which you wouldn't think is an obvious way, to Australia, but down and into the Med and on to the Canary Islands. And the kids were really good boat kids, and they met other kids, and they played and kept themselves pretty entertained. And then they did the Arc crossing, Atlantic Rally crossing from Canaries over to the Caribbean. And when they got there, the kids all through the 23 days or so of the crossing played with each other, and they entertained themselves for a while, but after a while they started fighting. So once they got to the Caribbean, they were always on the lookout for other kid boats, so that they wanted fresh meat. And the siblings just weren't working anymore. So every bay that they'd pull into, they'd whip out the binocs and they'd look around at all the boats and see if there were any kids on them. And after a couple of disappointments, they pulled into one bay and there was this 120-foot mega yacht that was just parked out there in the middle of the bay. And so the kids pulled out their binocs and they, looked around and, Mummy, there's kids on that boat. So she said, off you go then. So they jumped in the dink and took off to go to this mega yacht. And within about half an hour, the mega yacht's dinghy was towing the kids all around the bay on one of these big bananas. And they were screaming their heads off, having a wonderful time. So it was a huge success. And then a little while later, they sent their tender over to come and fetch my sister and her husband from their yacht and go over to the mega yacht. And so they went there and they had tea, and then they had drinks, and then they had dinner. And after dinner, this guy had 8 kids. And they all pulled out their guitars and they all started singing and having a wonderful time. And then they had dessert, and my sister eventually plucked up the courage and she said, so David, what is it that you do that you can have this wonderful lifestyle with your children? And he said, I used to play in a band. And my sister says, oh really? I happen to know some bands. Perhaps I know which band you played in. So he said, Pink Floyd. So she said, oh, that's nice. So it was a wonderful time for them. And I guess the learning from that is that, we're very fortunate being cruisers, and we can go out and go to all these bays and meet really interesting people. And we're all just humans at the end of the day. And whether you're in a 120-foot mega yacht or you're in a 28-foot Catalina or something, you're still a person, and we're all humans, and we should all treat each other nicely and be bold and fearless and just meet each other and greet each other and be nice. So thanks a lot.
Good story.
Floyd.
Richard, I think you got the flag in front of the camera.
That's okay. No, it wasn't catching. Not to worry.
So that was Mark, an epic ship, and you're talking about an epic ship too, huh? Suzanne on Be Gone. Here it comes. Here she comes.
Just wait, okay.
Found my liquid courage.
Yes.
I think everybody can hear me. So, my name's Suzanne from the sailing vessel Be Gone, and under normal circumstances I would have made up a story, because as a reformed tour guide all I do is make up stories, but instead I was reminded of this book, Tales of a Sea Gypsy, and you may know Jason. He had sailed in this area for a long time in San Francisco Bay, and I thought, it makes for a good story that's under 4 minutes, so if you're okay, I'll read it to you. The name of this story is Frozen Assets. The Ziploc bag, he shouted to his wife, who was already in the life raft. I'm going back for it. No, don't do it, she pleaded. It's not worth dying for. The boat could sink at any moment, and you'd get trapped inside. But the $15,000 that he had stashed in a resealable plastic bag, hidden deep in the freezer, seemed worth the risk to him. At least they'd have a little something to start over with. Like so many other cruisers, they had sold everything to buy their dreamboat. He had to get that plastic bag filled with both hundreds and hope. In the darkness, he found the companionway hatch and plunged below, all too literally, for the water was above his knees. He was naked except for a bulky foul-weather jacket that he had grabbed when the impact hurled him from his bunk. In equatorial latitudes, he preferred nude slumber, a pension his wife had dubbed sleeping tropicale. His bare legs made it easy for him to monitor the water's rise as it desperately flung pork chops and popsicles out of the reefer box. Suddenly, the boat lunged downward and to starboard. He couldn't delay any longer. He started to pull his hand out of the freezer, but the quick lurch had knocked something against his elbow. He grabbed at it. Incredible. It was a Ziploc full of green. As the deepening waters ballooned out his foul-weather coat, he stuffed the bag in his big pocket and hurried up the ladder. Once topside, his eyes quickly adjusted to the darkness. His wife's terrified face stood out clearly in the doorway of the life raft. "Hurry, hurry, she's going down fast." And truly she was, for no sooner had he recalled the advice of an old sailor mentoring only to step up into a life raft than it was time to do just that. It was a staggering lurch into a flexing raft, and with that his wife began cutting the tether that attached them to the sailboat. Otherwise they could be pulled beneath the waves and unwillingly riders to the caboose of a deep-sea death train. Now the raft was drifting away from the mortally wounded sloop. Like a sounding whale, the stern lifted slightly as she made her final plunge. And then she was gone, their magnificent swan of fiberglass and canvas that had so often swelled their hearts with pride. Her demise had been so swift and surreal that it was as if she had never existed. At this point, the overwhelming despair that they felt nearly paralyzed them. Together they had spent years transforming a dream into magnificent reality, only to witness it totally shattered in a few hundred seconds. The words that broke silence surprised both of them. "The back porch, that goddamn back porch," cursed the husband. "It must have been all that crap." It suddenly occurred to him that the reason they hadn't seen the gigantic ship approaching was because their view astern was partially obstructed by all the gear attached to the stern rail. This included propane tanks, fenders, an outboard engine, wind generator, horseshoe buoy, a barbecue, and so much other stuff. This was tragic, and it might prove deadly, because for every miraculous life raft survival story, who could know how many other tiny, fragile crafts had not made it? Before they could ponder the severity of their situation, for their very long luck took a major turn for the better. The ship suddenly gave a long, loud blast of its horn. Then a powerful beam of light danced through their raft, the bright orange canopy. The ship was coming back, and they would be rescued. This was truly amazing, for it was very likely that the huge vessel had barely even felt the impact. I'm almost done. Within an hour, I know, I'm almost done. It's almost done. It might even be worth the end. Within an hour, they were hoisted aboard and were now sealed in the captain's quarters. He was giving a heartfelt speech of apology. He admitted that he had no idea how it had happened, and he seemed sincerely sorry. He promised to do his best with the shipping company's insurance agent to make sure that they certainly would receive a just settlement. So in a bizarre reversal of role, the sailboat skipper felt obligated to cheer up the master of the ship that had just sunk his boat. He stood up, forgetting that he was still naked except for his foul-weather jacket, and began a short speech. "Thank you for your kind remarks and for the genuine remorse that you feel about this tragic accident. My wife and I are still probably in a state of shock, but we certainly realize the most important thing is that we are alive. And hopefully you will feel a little better when you realize that all is not lost. Before our boat sank, I was able at least to save this." And then he reached into his pocket, and with grand flourish he triumphantly pulled out the Ziploc bag full of frozen peas.
Right, we all need world peace, right? Ready? Okay, this is Elizabeth on Vivation.
Hi there. Well, we had that first speaker who was a wonderful poet, and I also have poetry. It's going to be nothing like her poetry. Here's an example. So when I was in the 7th grade, we had to write a poem for English class, right? Here I sit with a pen in my hand, trying to write a stanza, wasting all this valuable time when I could be watching Bonanza. So then, wouldn't you know, in the 11th grade, another darn English teacher made us write another poem. So I took that original poem, and I said, well, I'm in the 11th grade now, maybe there should be another verse. So I had another verse. But as long as I have to write it, I'll make best use of my time and jot a few words down on paper in hopes that they will rhyme. So that's the caliber of poem you're going to get. But my boat being a caliber 40, that kind of works. Okay, so again, I'm Elizabeth from the sailing vessel Bayfest. Get the right side up. And I realize since we're on the Heart, I don't have a printer, so I got to do it off my iPad. Okay. So for the first year and a half, we owned Bayfest. We had it up in Charleston Marina, which is right on the ocean on the mouth of Coos Bay in Oregon. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that area, but it's got to be the coldest, wettest, most miserable port on the face of the earth. So the time that we spent there really, really makes us appreciate the fact that we're here now and it's warm and it's sunny. So a friend of mine who still lives there, and they're doggedly working on their old steel boat, trying to get it shipshape. It's been years now, and they're eventually going to get it in the water. But she said, well, Charleston's not the best name for this place. We really ought to call it Foglandia. And it really ought to have a song. You need to write a song about Foglandia. Now, I won't torture you by singing it to you, but you can imagine the tune. It's a takeoff on America the Beautiful. You know, the one, oh beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, that lovely little song. Okay, this is Foglandia. Oh, miserable, for cloudy skies, for somber waves of rain, for ever-dripping condensate so full of salty pain. Foglandia, Foglandia, corrosion here is free. This cold, forsaken port is found beside the northern sea. So the second poem I have is about La Paz and about the wonderful, wonderful Bayfest that we have here, and so much thanks to the terrific people who worked so hard to put Bayfest on. So this is a tribute to them. Now that might sound really cool, except till I tell you, it's a limerick. It's a 2-verse limerick. Now you all know what a limerick is. You know, there once was a man from Nantucket. You know, that kind of thing. Okay, so here we go. La Paz is a city in Baja, where cruisers come after the ha-ha. All rat race work halts, and boats do the waltz, and the bungee attaches, no caca. And here there's a club called Cruceros, plus races with lots of veleros. There is a Bayfest that's simply the best. No others can even compare us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Joe from Valparaiso. We have Joe from Valparaiso. Maybe not. The next would be Christopher Columbus from the Mayflower. I think a couple of these people signed up on April 1st. And Christopher Columbus wasn't even on the Mayflower. So we go to Tom on Tappan Zee.
I'm Tom on the sailing. Does this work? Okay. All right, Tom on the sailing vessel Tappan Zee, and this is as true a story as a sailor and Welshman is capable. So my wife Annie and I had bought our boat, and it had wonderful teak cap rails that were looking a little sad. So we took advantage of a winter haul out inside without the mask in Bellingham, Washington during January and stripped previously when we were still outside, stripped all the old varnish off, bought this amazing 3-part wonder product that was going to last forever. Only you had to put on a coat. You had to put on like 15 coats. And you had to put a coat on every 3 hours. So immediately when the workers left Friday evening at 5 o'clock, we put on the first coat, put on the second coat at about 9 o'clock that night, and on through all of Friday night, all through the day Saturday, only getting snippets of sleep when we would go back to our house and relax. And you have to realize this product is really toxic, so you have to wear a mask when to do it. And I was the one that was up on the boat, and the boat is all totally stripped out. And I'm on the boat, and Annie is working from the side from the rolling scaffolding. And we're going around the cap rail and putting this stuff on. And fast forward, okay, so when we're talking, it's like this, because we've got the respirators on and back and forth. And, so we're not experienced watchkeepers at that time. So missing a night of sleep and going through all this, and it was a bit of a push. Fast forward 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Just finishing, the 11th coat or whatever it was. And I look back, and I'm on my knee pads, and she's over there, and I says, Annie, you missed a spot. Well, she determined that she had indeed not missed a spot, and that I must have missed a spot. But, being my sleep-addled state that I was in, I determined that actually, yes, you did too miss a spot. And Annie decided at that time that she was going to leave and walk back to the house, leave me the truck, and I could finish the damn spot if I chose. So she takes off, and this is 2 a.m. on Sunday morning in the middle of the winter. Annie walks back, and now I'm gonna, we're gonna leave me on the boat, and Annie walks back and figures, well, by the time I walk back, he will have driven back and he'll be at home. But Tom doesn't show up at, 3 a.m. Tom doesn't show up at 6 a.m. Annie falls asleep and wakes up, and it's 11 the next morning and still no Tom. Now, we've been successfully married for 15 years, but as you know, there are these salt-soluble marriages. And she's considering to herself, well, is this it? Is he with friends? Did he storm off? Is he? So, she doesn't know. It's getting to be the middle of the day and still no Tom. So let's jump back now to being me on the boat. And Annie leaves, and I just, get that little spot there. And I pretty quickly realize that the stepladder that I had used to get on the boat is pulled away because the scaffolding, of course, has to go around the entire boat. The scaffolding is on wheels, and it's about 5 foot down and about 3 foot away from the hull. We had stripped the boat. Now, this is before cell phones. We had taken the radio out of the boat. I was marooned in the boatyard with a respirator until around noon that Sunday, when somebody wandered in off the street looking for a bathroom. Came in the door, he said, hey buddy, you push that ladder over here, I'll tell you where the bathroom is, and I will buy you lunch. So the end of the story, of course, very quickly when I got home, Annie, was concerned clearly what had happened. And we had a good laugh out of that. And I can say right now that Tappan Zee is a happy ship, and the Brightwork is painted.
Good job. Great story. Jimmy on Sea Otter. Anybody know who Jimmy is? Jimmy who? Yeah. think La Paz would fall apart without Jimmy on Sea Otter here.
Just wait.
All right, I'm Jimmy on Sea Otter, and this story happened back in '97. I was sailing up in the Sea of Cortez with my wife and daughter, and this was August of '97. We were coming back from San Juanico, heading to Puerto Escondido. It was hot, August. There was a hurricane Guillermo going by the outside of the Baja. We were motoring, no wind, and just my wife yells at me, "Hey, honey, look at those clouds!" And I look up at the spreader level, and we had a bunch of clouds. I mean, whipping by the boat like 50 miles an hour. I look up. I was naked at the time. I was in the cockpit naked and kicking back, motoring, and all of a sudden the wind line I could see coming at us. It hit, and it had been recorded off Loretto back then. It was up to 70 knots of wind, and I had a smaller sister ship with an outboard on the back of the trimaran, and we were just motoring. When the wind line hit, my hair just was plastered back, and we spun around 180 degrees. We were 2 miles from Isla Coronado, and there's no way we're going to make it, so we just ran with it, and the sea started building, and we started surfing. So we had no sail up at all, and we were doing 11 knots with no sail. And with a tiller, so I'm on the tiller, naked, just standing in the cockpit, center cockpit, and surfing 11 knots. And all of a sudden, it's like, honey, I need that chart. Take a look at this point up ahead and see how make sure we're going to have enough room there. And it's a little shallow there, so and we'll be 11 knots to 4 knots. So she grabs the chart and brings it up, and I grab it, and it's like flashes of Captain Ron, and it's like I grab it, and the chart goes flying away. Oh shit! So okay, well we'll keep on going. We gotta go straight down, and all of a sudden, honey, I really gotta pee. And so she grabs a bucket, and so I'm surfing 11 knots, and I'm peeing in a bucket. And my daughter's 7 years old, and I invited her nephew or her cousin, my nephew, along for a month of fun with Uncle Jimmy, and he got sick all the time. He was so scared and petrified down below, crying and praying, he thought it was the end of the world. He couldn't even throw up. So next, it was a boat without any roller furling and hang-on sails. So I ended up noticing that some of the lashings are coming undone. And I told my wife, honey, grab the tiller, meaning the tiller to steer the boat, and I have to run up at the bow of the boat, butt-ass naked, no harness, and wrestle my Genoa down, because it was starting to shoot up to the top of the forestay. So we get that wrestle back down. I come back on the cot. My wife is surfing, down 11 knots, get in the trough, down to 4 knots, 11 knots, down to 4 knots. And her eyes, she's just terrified. I could just see this big black saucers. I mean, she was just like, oh my God, get back, get back here. And it lasted about 45 minutes. And it's amazing how quick it came up and how quick it went away. The seas dropped back down, and my daughter was out playing with her Barbies on the foredeck. And then we motored back to Escondido, and there were a bunch of other friends in there, and boats had drugged through there and everything. But watch out, this was a torito, so that's what we get here in the summertime, like Shabascos and Torritos, and that's it.
Thanks for sharing yourself with us. Okay, is there a David Holly? Romina? David? Romina? Okay, how about a Shelley from Avatar? All right.
All right, everybody. This is a hard act to follow. Some of that poetry was really good earlier, but I too am a poet. Some of you may have heard this poem if you were here during the hurricane. This was a poem written about two friends that I lost in the hurricane. It's called Two Ships. Two ships pass in the night, honoring and respecting each other's light. Sometimes you meet a beautiful soul. Life on earth is like a big fishbowl. We swim past each other wanting to meet. Just saying hi makes the other one feel neat. It's all about the love we share and give to one another. Love is not just for your mother. It's for friends we meet and people we know, which is everyone out there if you give it a go. Kindness and sharing our wisdom of life can really help others get through their strife. Kill them kindness, I was once told. It makes your enemy feel ugly and scold. Being happy is most important of all. The joy you share can softens someone's fall. The smile on your face is a gift to a stranger. Making new friends can get you out of danger. Knowing your course and which way to steer can help guide others away from their fear. On the horizon rises a ship. Pick the right time to let your flag dip. Honor, respect, and love, all are gifts from above. To share these things leaves a happy heart and gets rid of the pain left by the sharp dart. Death is a door to another dimension. The happiness shared was meant to get your attention. The body is like a shell left behind on the beach. A beautiful reminder of the soul that tried to reach into our hearts to leave happiness behind, like the stars in the sky that have always shined. Now this one I wrote back when I was cruising up in the sea. We were off of Montserrat, I believe, and there was a storm coming, and we were heading towards Agua Verde trying to beat the rain cloud. But the sunset, this is called, the sun was really glowing that night. As the sun drops below the mountains in the west, the sky grows orange like a hunting vest. The water turns yellow, purple, and blue-greens. This great spirit is trying to tell us what it all means. Like a light in your eyes when you die, the sun fades away, leaving a glorious sky. The memories are all there in magical colors. A special friend, someone loved like brothers. The night is black like the pain in your heart. Stars twinkling in the sky shines the hope of another start. There the moon is there, winking his eye, as we continually ask, why, but why? As time marches on, the sky just turns, when suddenly, a light, the sun still burns. A bright eye lights up a new life, a chance to live a whole nother life. It is time for you to make a new friend. So now you know there is no end. How many lifetimes does it take to learn the light of the sun will always burn?
Thank you for sharing yourself with us. Okay, Steve and Bobby from Eureka. Steve and Bobby from Eureka. You have a winner.
I don't know what I signed up for. I don't have a story.
Oh, like maybe you just signed up to listen, huh? Well, that's a good story.
I signed up for the wrong thing. I mean, I have stories.
Well, you got a couple minutes. Okay. Well, we'll go on to Gail Funk from 5th season. She's a recent addition. I think she said she just asked me if she could talk, so Gail Funk, 5th season. I think we have her.
She's coming up for us.
Hi, I'm Gail Funk from the sailing vessel 5th season, catamaran out in the anchorage, and we'll be leaving Monday. I have a sailor song for you tonight. Though my sails be torn and tattered, and my mast be turned about, let the night wind chill me to my very soul. Though the spray might might sting my eyes, and the stars no light provide. Give me just another morning light to hold, and I will not lie me down, this rain a-raging. No, I will not lie me down in such a storm. And if this night be unblessed, I shall not take my rest until I reach that bar shore.
Okay, I'm going to go back through the list to see if anybody showed up here. Gail on Color Me Gone, did they show up? Joshua Slocum. How about Billy on Yellow Star? Is he here yet?
Oh, you don't want his stories.
We're going to give him an hour tomorrow.
I don't think he's going to be here.
Okay, it's Joe on Valparaiso? No. And so if, I guess Kay, if you could come up and do your little poem on boats. And that'll put the same Kay, which is going to do. And that's going to be it. There won't be one tomorrow because there weren't enough people signing up, but we sure appreciate the people that did sign up. So after this, everybody go get drunk and have a luau. Huh?
I'm halfway there already. Okay. Just a few days ago, I went around in the dinghy and got a lot of the boat names, and I couldn't fit all of them in. And this is very hard. But and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I tried. So, okay, it's a little ditty of boat names. If you use your Irish diplomacy, you may realize that two can play between the sheets with my Tyroa in Hotel California. It started out a fantasy, but Miss Scarlet, with her ruby reds, made Dad's dream into a reality when they decided to just do it on Ocean Quest, Nowhere Bound, with Raven's song playing while Coral Rose and Terabang, Idlewild, Lacuna, and Cyber were watching. Very soon, temptation will cause an indiscretion which will make Rain Dancer bump into Katie on Cactus and blame it on Georgia on my mind while eating Chips Ahoy with Una Lena and Andiamo. Wandering Puffin yells against the wind, "Feel free to let it be while on the hook. Rock and roll with your amiga, Simentris, on Friday, while Gail Force shouts, our someday has finally come." Amazing Grace and Avatar, soulmates, said it was worth waiting for. Talk about lunacy. Rock Bottom had a bad romance with Delight and won a yellow star for misbehaving. Imagine how the wet bar, almost free, will take Desire and Hindsight and turn a sea witch into a mama bird. If you can scout out Maria and slip her into Rogue's lair, you will have a revolution and hear an echo of erotica beyond your imagination. Yarn Spinner had a fellowship with Rosa Shannon, and a new beginning is God's way of making an abnormal destiny into an adventure you will admire. Now, if this has made any sense, you've all gone nuts.
See you again next year. And come in, the winner will be announced on Sunday at the awards presentation. So everybody show up for that too.